The Twin Blade, a double-ended sword, a unique fantasy weapon that is completely possible to make, but does it have any practical function? It's twice the cost, requires double the skill, but does it result in a quicker kill? Sorry, I rhymed there. In today's episode, let's find out. Welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. I am your host, Tyrant, and today's episode is the Season 5 finale. Yes, Season 5 has been our longest season. We've done a whole bunch of really cool and awesome stuff, but it's time to finish it off. And it's time to finish it off because I have got some amazing stuff upcoming for Season 6, which will probably take us to the end of the year. So for today's season finale, we're going to be taking a look at the Twin Blade, a double-bladed sword. Now, I would say the most popular, iconic version of the double-bladed sword isn't even a sword. It's actually probably Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber, which is obviously a little bit different to a sword, but there are some pop culture interpretations. For example, Thanos' double-bladed sword from the Marvelverse. That thing is fascinating. It has a tiny, stubby little handle. It only has a single edge on each side, and both of those edges are facing the opposite way. It is hot garbage. But there are some good versions of these, at least what I think will be the most practical for testing. So that's what we're going to be making in today's episode, and that would be obviously the twin blades from, the Darksouls or Elden Ring. Now, you guys know that I am a big Soulsborne fan, but I'm not going to be going with anything specifically from one of the games. I'm going to be creating something, first off, within the budget, but also that is, I would say, a little bit more generalized, because if you look at some of the ones from, let's say Elden Ring, for example, you have different length handles, different types of guards, a whole range of different types of blades. So what we're going to be doing is creating something a little bit more in between. So it should give us a good basis for testing. Now, when it comes to this weapon, it is a little bit dangerous, more than usual, because it is quite a long weapon. You have a whole bunch of blades towards you when you're spinning it around, so hopefully I don't take a chunk out of my thigh or like the side of my head. Yeah, but with that out of the way, let's get started with today's project. Just before we get into today's build, I did want to mention this very quickly. This is one of those projects that costs literally hundreds of dollars. It's 2 entire swords that I had to buy and build from scratch. It's quite expensive. So if you want to support the channel and this type of content, you can head down below into the description. There'll be links to my Patreon and YouTube memberships. I try to create exclusive content kind of to give back to you guys, and I have things like updates, behind the scenes stuff, a whole bunch of fun stuff like that. But it is support from you guys that allows me to do these sorts of projects, especially these really expensive ones where I'm spending a lot of money on just one episode. So if today's the day that you want to support the channel, I would genuinely appreciate it. It's literally the only thing that allows me to do these sorts of kind of expensive projects. But with that out of the way, let's get back to the episode. So the build for the twin blade. Obviously, I needed 2 swords to start with, so that's exactly what I did. So I bought 2 blank blades that are going to be the basis for today's project. The first thing that I needed to do was sharpen up these blades, and the reason why I got to do this first and not last is because once the blades are put together, I'm not going to have enough room physically, so I got to sharpen the blades as the very first step. Then after that, I'm going to create a steel connection point. Essentially what it is where the tangs of the blades can kind of slot in on both sides, and then I can weld everything together. I did toy with a whole bunch of different connection methods, but honestly, I thought just welding everything together would be the strongest way to create this weapon. And if this was a real-world weapon, as in it was mass-manufactured, that sort of thing, if you were going for strength, you would just join everything together, kind of like this anyway, so that's what I went with. So after we've got the steel connection points, I then need to weld it all together with some big, fat, ugly welds. I'm then going to grind all of the rough welds so then I can put a wrap on the handle. Now for the handle, I'm going to use some cotton rope as the risers. So then when we put the leather wrap on, it's a little bit more contoured. Speaking of the handle wrap, I cut a long strip of black leather off one of my hides. I'm going to epoxy this around the handle. I then went with a beautiful Tyrant thread cord wrap to go in between the wraps, just to give it a little bit of contrasting colors so it didn't look so bland. And with all that out of the way, that is the build for the twin blade done. It isn't really too complex, honestly. It's just a lot of materials and costs, more than anything else. It is time to explore the twin blade or the double blade. This one is kind of a caveat special because there's so many different aspects to this blade. Now, what are my initial thoughts? I'll just give you my quick summarized thoughts. I don't think it's completely useless, but there are so many like barriers to entry here that just make it not practical. But let's just go through them one by one. Let's, move it around. Let's see how it feels. Let's see how it goes. So first and foremost, this one here, I've made a small mistake. I made the handle a little too short. It should be, I think, a little bit bigger. But what I did to compensate with that is up till about here, it's actually not sharpened. So this is completely blunt. And the reason why I want that is, for example, if this is my range, all of a sudden I can grab the blunt part and I can extend my range even further. So there's blunt sections here for that specific reason, just so I can extend my range a little bit. But in terms of when it comes to using it, right, they're a complicated weapon because how would you use this thing? Would you use it like a regular sword? If you use it like a regular sword, you're kind of missing the whole point of having that second blade. So do you use it more like a staff? Problem with using it kind of like a staff is we don't have as much room as the other ones. Do we use it like a pole arm? Well, if we use it like a pole arm, just use a pole arm. Just use a pole arm. So there's a couple of like different caveats here, right? In terms of how I would use it, I would kind of use it as an amalgamation of all of them, honestly. I would use it as both a pole arm, a little bit of staff in there, and of course, a little bit of swording in there. So, really, you have to go and do that? You can do chops, you can come back up, then you can do a follow-up with the second blade. So there's a lot of like different ways that you can actually use this thing for sure, right? Marcus asked if it feels clumsy. I don't know if that's the word I would use to describe it. More like cumbersome. That's probably the weapon I would use. The word. If you're enjoying today's episode, you should consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Sorry, Tony, I didn't mean that one, buddy. No, I'll break it instantly. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of the dynamics here because we have some issues. First off, this one in particular obviously doesn't have a full, guard here. For this sort of weapon, I feel like it's absolutely paramount because when you're presenting this blade forward, it doesn't matter how you're using it, right? You kind of need more hand protection than regular crossguard. So having some like beam here that you can actually deflect properly with, I think is a really important design choice. Now, when you look at the, like the twin blades, Thanos' sword, any of these sort of double sword pop culture ones, they don't really have it, which means that's kind of a really bad thing. That's kind of a really bad thing. You're exposing your hands quite a lot. The reason why I don't have it on this particular version is because I'm not fighting anybody, so I don't really need it. And this thing is super duper expensive. This thing is expensive. So when it comes to the dynamic of this, right, the issue I have is kind of defending my body from every single which side is a lot more difficult and slow and kind of awkward in some ways. For example, if I want to defend this side of my body, because the blade's already over here, we're good, right? This thing is not in my way, we're good. Doesn't matter how you kind of use it. Defending this side, good. Problem is, when I come over to this side, to get the blade around is a lot slower. Not only is it a lot slower, it puts me in an awkward position. So even if I wanted to defend it kind of like this, I'm still not in the most optimal positions to do these sorts of things. So quickly and effectively, especially in if you're fighting or sparring, getting over to the other side of the body can be a little bit of a challenge. So that's kind of one of my bigger issues, right? Just this is great and all, but it's in the way. It gets in the way of you. I feel like this is where I should be with my effective range on this and then extend into it, but I'm barely touching him. To actually get close, I need to be like here. Look how close in range I am, and especially to come back with that second weapon. thrusts are great. We can come down with a second blade, we can come over with a main blade that we can then swap hands, come down with power strikes, into thrusts. All this is great. We can hold the little, the blunt section there, extend out our range. That's what I wanted to talk about, range. The range on this is deceptive. This is a big weapon. It's a big weapon, takes a lot of resources. It's literally taller than me. But when you hold it, to get good leverage on it, I need to be up here and here. This is my strong points of holding this blade. Problem is, this range is no longer than a regular sword. The only way to extend out my range is to actually go down here to get that extra length on it. Now you can get extra length on it, you can get a lot of extra length on it, but that's only using it for that thrust. When you slice and when you chop, I don't have that much reach. And it was actually very deceptive when I was cutting, because I was kind of there, I'm like, why am I not cutting all the way through this? I'm at an adequate length, especially for this length of weapon, but for some reason my range was just out. And it's because it's actually not that long. It's deceptively short in a way. Now, when it comes to actually fighting with this, I have sparred with a double-ended type weapon. There was some doubles, I got some good hits in, I got, beaten a couple of times, but the truth is, it's just kind of a less effective polearm, because that's what this is, right? So we've moved this thing around, and I think it's time we get to Tyrant's initial thoughts score. Or tits for short. Yes, obviously we are going to be giving the twin blade a tits rating. Now there are a couple of things that I want to kind of touch on and talk about that are a little bit kind of adjacent to the actual weapon itself. First off, the manufacturing costs of this are insane. Like, even as someone like me making this costs double everything. I have 2 blades here, so the cost of 1 blade, I've got to pay double. I've got 2 cross guards, I've got, a longer wrap, I've got more material everywhere. So in terms of the costs to make this sort of weapon, they are very prohibitive. So that's a huge detriment right on the, right on the face of it. Then we come to other things like just carrying this thing around. How would you carry this thing around? Honestly, it's very cumbersome. And like I said earlier, you don't really get too many reach benefits from it, which kind of sucks. So you have a big bulky weapon that is heavy because it's double the weight of a regular sword, that costs a lot more, that doesn't really make you better in any sort of tangible way. So there's a lot of negatives just surrounding like the logistics of this sort of weapon before we even get into the effectiveness or the design or anything. So let's get started with it. Comfort. It's comfortable, it's kind of heavy, and like you can move it around. It's not the biggest detriment in the world, so let's go like a 9 for comfort. You can use it. I'm not going to hold that against it. Let's get into effectiveness next, because that one's, I think, a little bit more complex. You can do devastating cuts with it. You can thrust reasonably well with it. You can extend your range. It's got some benefits here. It does. But it's a lot less maneuverable, a lot less nimble, and the biggest issue that I brought it up multiple times, is that weird kind of like range thing. You feel like you have more range because you have such a big long weapon, but you just have the normal range of a normal sword. So for the effectiveness, I'm somewhere like a 6. Yeah, it can do some damage. Yeah, it's kind of intimidating. Yeah, you can spin it around. But it doesn't actually mean that it's more deadly or effective than a regular sword. A regular sword, if we just cut this in half, is going to do the exact same amount of damage as this. That's just how that works. So let's get on to the design. The design is interesting because there's lots of different designs, like I said. This particular design here, I think it needs a little bit more of a handle for a little bit more extra leverage. I need a bar here to properly defend the knuckles and hands. So that being said, if we give this the absolute benefit of the doubt, we say we have those 2 modifications already, I'm still somewhere around like a 6 for the design. I don't think I can go much higher. It's a complicated weapon where, like I said, I don't think it's wholesale useless, but man, it's got a lot of detriments before you even get to using it, like I said. And then last but not least, we get into wieldability. Yeah, I mean, you can move it around, like I said, with comfort. You can kind of... The detriments here are simply protecting other parts of your body with this part in the way. Like, you can do it, it's just a lot more awkward and clunky, and those milliseconds make a difference. And that's where I really think the detriment in this sort of weapon is. So I'm probably gonna have to give it for a wieldability, like a 7. You can move it around, you can do some cool shit with it, you can do some complex cuts, but at the same time, there is just a huge awkwardness of having that second blade, no matter how you use it. It doesn't really matter how you use it. It leaves you open to a lot of things, because if I use it like kind of like this, right, all of a sudden I'm a lot more exposed to thrusts. So holding it out like a regular sword, I can defend thrusts a lot easier, but it also makes it a lot more awkward to get over the other sides of the body. There's like give and take to how you want to use it. I do like the fact that there is versatility in how you use it. You can use it kind of like sword, can you kind of like use it like a staff, you can kind of use it like a polearm, but this is one of those real rare examples where you can kind of use it like all of them, but it's much worse than all of them, essentially. But yeah, that's going to give us a final score of 27 out of 40. Yeah, it's over halfway. It's not completely throw it out useless, but I really don't think that this is something that I would probably go with. It's really cool. It looks fucking cool. It looks sick, but there isn't a lot of utility here when you really start to dig into it. Now, there are a couple of caveats. Obviously, there's a big elephant in the room. Lightsabers are different. Lightsabers you can turn off and on, so you could use one side independently and activate the other side when you needed to. So it also doesn't require edge alignment. There's a lot of give and takes there. Lightsabers are a whole different can of worms. This is a sword. It is a twin blade. It is a double blade. They're built different, essentially. But that's going to be all for today's episode. I genuinely hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you want to support my channel. I would really, really, really appreciate it. This thing's fucking expensive. The logistics of this thing is terrible, super expensive, hundreds of dollars. If you want to support the channel, my links to my Patreon down below, or YouTube memberships, I genuinely appreciate it. But that's going to be all for now. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you next week in another episode. Have a good one.